You were probably already expecting this particular versus at MWC 2015, but perhaps with what Samsung has done with their brand new flagship smartphone, this is more relevant than ever. It's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the Samsung Galaxy S6 versus the Apple iPhone 6. Samsung has promised an upgrade in the design language for the brand new Galaxy S smartphone, and that's exactly what they brought us. Probably the change that we have been waiting for. Now, we do say that there are some influences obviously being had here, and now that we are looking at the iPhone 6 versus the Galaxy S6, we will say it. They do look a little bit similar, especially since the metal around the rim happens to have a thinness that's very similar to the iPhone 6, but its influences also come from the Galaxy Note 4, especially considering the small edges that are raising up on the top and bottom of that metal frame for the Galaxy S6, and the only real similarity that makes it pretty striking is on the bottom, where you see the micro USB charging port, the headphone jack, and even the speaker grill on the bottom. But nonetheless, the Galaxy S6 now has a metal frame and a glass panel construction on the front and the back, and it is actually quite thin, like I mentioned already, but also very light, making it one of the better handling Galaxy S6 devices out there. And if you go to around the back, the main difference here with the Samsung Galaxy S6 from previous iterations is its glass backing, of course, but it's also not removable. More of a unibody design is found here, much like in the iPhone 6. But also its camera on the S6 is protruding out quite a lot and might be a bit of a problem for those of you who like to slide your phones around on tables, for example. Apple has always had some pretty great designs, and Samsung finally offers a flagship with a design language and material choice that does stand true to its high-end nature, and is probably the change that you have been waiting for, even if it looks pretty similar in this particular versus. Of course, considering where we are in the smartphone market today, it's no surprise that both of these phones in their 6th iterations are trying to up the ante in display technology. The iPhone 6 now comes with a 4.7-inch IPS LCD display that has a resolution of 1334 by 750, resulting in a pixel density of 326 ppi. Now, Android is somewhat moving beyond the 1080p space and going into the Quad HD space, and that's exactly what the Galaxy S6 does with a Quad HD display that at 5.1 inches has a pixel density of 577, which is pretty insane. Super AMOLED, though, continues to offer what we love about it from previous iterations: very deep blacks, vibrant colors that look even more vivid on this even higher resolution display, and from what we've seen so far, we really do enjoy it. The iPhone 6's display also gets some pretty good marks, but with its lower resolution, if you are looking to keep up in the spec war, well, then you're probably going to end up picking the Galaxy S6 because it just simply trumps the iPhone 6 display in terms of its sheer pixel density. As always, a by-the-numbers look isn't quite too fair when comparing these two devices from two different ecosystems that provide very different performance experiences. That being said, the iPhone 6 offers an A8 chip, which comprises a dual-core processor clocked in at 1.4 GHz and is backed by 1 GB of RAM. But on the other hand, the Galaxy S6 is going to set a precedent in the sense that it is not sporting a Qualcomm chipset like many probably expected, but instead Samsung is going to globally release this phone with an Exynos processor backed by 3 GB of RAM, an in-house processor that they are optimizing for their software. And as such, we should pretty much expect fantastic performance from the Galaxy S6, and that is exactly what we had in our short time playing with the phone. In other hardware, the iPhone 6 is available in 32, 64, and 128 GB flavors, but that is also going to be the case for the Galaxy S6, which now does not come with a removable back, at which you will not be able to expand the memory or be able to replace the battery. Despite the significant difference on paper, both processing packages do a great job in handling their respective experiences, and fans of either have had nothing to complain about in terms of this particular aspect of this versus, because both ecosystems still provide very good performance no matter which one they have. In the camera department, Apple stays away from the megapixel race that dominates the Android world, with the iPhone 6 featuring a 8-megapixel rear shooter, the same as its predecessor, but with some improvements across the board: a better sensor, an autofocus system called Focus Pixels, and a software-based image stabilization. Video gets a boost as well, with 720p slow-motion video being captured at 240 frames per second. The front-facing camera has a f2.2 lens with a burst mode and HDR video. But now, the Galaxy S6 has a 16 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, both of which have f1.9 aperture. And they also come with, on both sides, an auto live HDR mode. Now, Samsung has been able to create some pretty incredible cameras in the past for the Android world, and we're expecting it to be even better on this new iteration of the Galaxy S line. We won't really have any real comparisons in terms of pictures until we get our hands on our own Galaxy S6, at which time I'll probably do a big camera shootout to see which of these cameras really provide the better experience for the user. And finally, in software, we're taking a look at two different ecosystems, like I said before, at which time I also said that the performance on either of these devices should be good for the users to decide on which one they want to back. That being said, iOS 8 remains aesthetically similar to iOS 7, but introduces a few new features like Apple Pay to take advantage of an NFC chip, improvements to iCloud, a health app, some improved notifications with its own version of the dropdown, and the ability to use third-party keyboards. But ultimately, it still looks like iOS has looked for many years now at this point, and many of the users who flock to iPhone will have a very familiar experience when going through their ecosystem. On the other hand, Samsung provided a look at their brand new TouchWiz, which is an updated version with Lollipop as the backend, and you will see that change in the notification dropdown and also in the recent app screen. But in the little time that we were able to mess with the Galaxy S6, we didn't really find too many extras in the little presentation that we got for it. I actually didn't find myself accidentally triggering any of the many features that would have been on the, let's say, Galaxy S5 or the Note 4 after it. For the most part, the Lollipop editions were really the only real aesthetic changes that were happening here. What we really did see is the fact that this version of TouchWiz might have been dialed back to the point where its performance is kind of through the roof, especially when optimized with the Exynos chip that is inside. I really had a hard time making it stutter on me the way that it was easy to do so on other Samsung devices. And on the Galaxy S6, we're really hoping that TouchWiz, despite having all of the features that it does, and we're not saying that it doesn't have those features, we just didn't really mess with a lot of them, will be able to perform faster than any other iteration from before. And that will put it on par with the performance aspect that iPhone users have always enjoyed with their particular ecosystem in iOS. And so, there you have it for this quick look at the Samsung Galaxy S6 versus the Apple iPhone 6. These sixth iterations in these two respective ecosystems bring a lot of enhancements to their lines, not only in design, display, and especially in performance, with two different operating systems being backed by in-house processing packages at this point, but also from a camera experience that hopefully will yield very great looking photos. I will have a full versus not only on the camera, but on all the aspects between these two, especially since their similarities are starting to get a little bit more pronounced, and we will see which one of these two phones, light and metal clad, are going to be better for you. So keep it tuned to Android Authority for all of the best coverage, and stay tuned for even more from Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, Spain, especially more of our coverage from Samsung.